And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska marine weather update on this Thursday, March 28th, 2024. And we start off with the sea ice. Well, one thing is certain, we've had some milder air with temperatures above freezing here around Bristol Bay, as well as up here through Cook Inlet. So we expect with this couple of storms that are going to be impacting the area. We have two storms. One is currently across the central Aleutians, will be passing through the Pribilofs tonight and then be located around Nunavik Island, Etolan Strait by midday Friday. This system will be accompanied by some strong gusty winds, initially southeasterly ahead of it, and then shifting at least down here through Bristol Bay more toward the south-southwest before occluding. And then a second stronger and a storm that has more in the way of moisture is going to ride up into the northern Alaska Peninsula and then split up here through Shelikof Strait, riding up through Cook Inlet, as well as one piece pulling back here into the southwest interior. Milder air, windy conditions ahead of that will likely further break up some of the ice in Cook Inlet, at least over the weekend. But we are going to have colder air follow behind both of these systems late in the weekend and especially early middle next week, and that will likely linger into the early days of April. But we could see the ice want to start to shift back toward the southwest as we get past the weekend. So keep that in mind. But otherwise, it is going to be a stormy pattern. Here comes Storm 1. That low late tonight, early Friday morning will be located just east of the Pribilof Islands, heading on up toward Nunavik Island and Etolan Strait. Occluded front ahead of it will have some snow. Accumulating snow, winter weather advisories here along areas of the Yukon, Kuskokwim deltas, Bristol Bay extending inland a bit. 3 to 6 inches of snow with wind gusts as high as, say, 40, 45 miles an hour. There could be some gusts to 50 miles an hour along the immediate coast. But by winter storm standards, not a biggie. But the next storm is going to have more moisture. So by the time we get to Friday afternoon, the first storm is kind of sitting there over Etolan Strait, Nunavik Island, and weakening. There's a little secondary development around Kodiak Island. That'll just push some gusty winds and a little light precipitation with it. But this is the main low that will be riding up along this front. As we go into Saturday afternoon, that low comes right up and splits. Part of it wants to go toward Shelikof Strait and up Cook Inlet, another piece of energy, back to the west of the Alaska Range. And this system is going to have definitely stronger winds. We have high wind watch in effect for the Anchorage hillside area, as well as we expect some high winds there along the central Alaska Range. And just given this broad circulation around this general area of low pressure, we do expect that we could see the ice want to advance southward rather here in parts of the central Bering by the time we get in the backside of the system later in the weekend. But it's going to be active weather for sure, and that moisture is going to make it all the way across the Brooks Range up to the Arctic coast by the time we get into Sunday afternoon and evening. So for marine concerns, Panhandle starts out relatively quiet. Winds will be out of the north 10 knots, inner channels waves a couple of feet. Look for northwesterly winds 10-15 knots along the outer coast in the nearshore waters within 15 nautical miles, waves generally 6-7 feet. For Saturday, winds are going to turn around to the south-southeast ahead of that front, with the first, as that low begins to exert itself with the stronger system. Kind of a mixed bag of winds, west 10 knots around Ketchikan, Metlakatla in Dixon Entrance, but southeast picking up 25 knots, 3-4 foot waves there. Stevens Passage, Lynn Canal. South-southeast winds 20-25 knots. They're going to increase further toward the northern western Gulf. Swells 9 to 12 feet, but certainly building out here through this region. So Friday in advance is that initial low that's way out toward Nunavik Island. We have that front and weak secondary low development around Kodiak Island. We could see 40 knot southeasterly gales into the entrance there of Cook Inlet, 30 knot southeasterly winds along the eastern Kenai coast, southeast of 20 knots Prince William Sound, and then on the backside winds 30 knots there off of Anchor Point with 6-foot waves. But by the time we get into Saturday, the stronger storm, as I said, looks like it may split Coming up through Shelikof Strait and Cook Inlet. Ahead of it, east-southeast winds. We're looking at 45 knot gales there outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance and in Prince William Sound. 50 knot winds there off of Cape Suckling. So definitely some higher gust. And then as those winds funnel around through Turnagain Arm, there could be higher winds along Anchorage Hillside, gusting 70 miles an hour on Saturday. And going down along the length of the Alaska Peninsula, winds around Kodiak Island Friday, south-southeast, 25 knots Shelikof Strait, 35 knots east of there, in through the western Gulf. And generally, south-southwest winds, 30 knots there along the Alaska Peninsula as that front works its way up into the northern parts of the Alaska Peninsula into the mainland. And then we expect Saturday, with that next low lifting northward, we could see southerly gales of 40 to 45 knots around Kodiak Island, generally west-southwest winds 30 knots across the Alaska Peninsula. Waves 7-9 feet here. Highest waves western Gulf could be up around 10 to 15 feet. And then 7 to 8 foot waves in the open waters there of the southeast Bering. For the Aleutians for Friday, winds will be west-northwest eastern Aleutians, 25 to 30 knots. More northerly once you get Atka and Adak westward, 15 to 20 knots all the way back out toward the western Aleutians. And then Saturday, southwest winds 20 to 25 knots over the eastern Aleutians, veering west through the central Aleutians. We're looking at 20, 25 knot winds, and then 25 to 30 knot northwesterly winds there west of Adak. For the southwest coast, so we have south-southeast winds on Friday with that front and low pressure that's going to eventually by midday be located over Etolan Strait and Nunavik Island. 25 knots into Bristol Bay. We expect northeast winds out of Norton Sound and along the lower Yukon Delta at 25 knots, and then 30 knot north to northwest winds from St. Matthew down through St. Paul. And for Saturday, we find, now keep in mind that other low is going to be lifting up this way and then splitting, one section going west of the Alaska Range, another going up through Cook Inlet. The backside, north winds 20 to 30 knots from just outside there of Norton Sound, all the way down to St. Matthew. So we do expect the ice could start to advance here for the latter part of the weekend. And along the Arctic coast, winds will be kind of a mix at 10 knots. Northeasterly 15 knots, turning more, I should say 15 to 20 knots through the lower Chukchi Sea. And as we pass south of the Bering Strait, 25 to 30 knot northerly winds along the west side of the Seward Peninsula and north side of St. Lawrence Island. And then on Saturday, mixed bag variable winds 5 to 10 knots there along the Arctic coast. Those winds will increase northerly, though, through the Chukchi Sea. We expect 35 knot northerly gales through the Bering Strait on the north side of St. Lawrence Island along the west side of the Seward Peninsula. So within these areas, we expect there could be blowing snow be an issue, along with maybe perhaps some light falling snow. But nevertheless, we are going to see colder air then return in this northerly flow along the west side of the state after the first and second storm passes through the state here for the weekend and into early next week. Expect colder temperatures to advance across much of the mainland.